What if I told you there's a fruit that laughs at minus 40 degrees Celsius? A berry that blooms when everything else is dead? That thrives in climates so brutal they'd kill an apple tree in hours? And what if I told you that you've probably never seen it in a store? Not because it doesn't exist, but because the food industry doesn't want you to have it? This is the story of the honeyberry, and it's about to change everything you thought you knew about superfoods. Extreme cold survival. Picture this: the Siberian tundra. Temperatures plummet to minus 47 degrees Celsius. The ground is frozen solid for 8 months of the year. Nothing should survive here. Nothing should grow. And yet, there's a plant that doesn't just survive, it thrives. The honeyberry, or Lonicera caerulea, is the most cold-hardy fruit-bearing plant on Earth. While your strawberries are dying at the first hint of frost, while blueberries are shriveling in Zone 5, the honeyberry is standing tall in USDA Hardiness Zone 1. Zone 1. That's the Arctic. That's where the permafrost begins. But here's where it gets wild. It's not just surviving. When temperatures drop to minus 7 degrees during bloom, conditions that would obliterate any other fruit crop, the honeyberry's flowers just keep going. They're frost-tolerant during their most vulnerable stage. Evolution didn't just make this plant tough, it made it defiant. These shrubs push through snowmelt, bloom before anything else dares to wake up, and provide the first nectar of spring to desperate pollinators. And they've been doing this for millennia, hidden in the boreal forests of Siberia, Kamchatka, Hokkaido, and the frozen edges of North America. Forbidden/Iron Curtain genetics. Now here's where the story gets political, and strange, and a little bit forbidden. For most of the 20th century, the honeyberry wasn't just rare in the West. It was locked behind the Iron Curtain. While Americans were perfecting their bland supermarket tomatoes and Europeans were obsessing over wine grapes, Soviet scientists were secretly breeding something extraordinary. Starting in the 1950s, deep in USSR research stations, botanists began working with wild Siberian honeyberries, not for profit, not for export, for survival. They were breeding fruit that could feed people in climates where nothing else would grow. They were engineering resilience into genetics, while the West was engineering shelf life into cardboard strawberries. These Soviet cultivars were developed over decades, generation after generation of selection for larger berries, better taste, and even greater cold tolerance. And then the USSR collapsed. Suddenly, these genetic treasures started leaking out. West versus Soviet contrast. Let me paint you a picture of the contrast. In the West, fruit breeding was about one thing: making money for corporations. Bigger yields, longer shelf life, fruits that could survive being shipped thousands of miles in refrigerated trucks. They engineered tomatoes that last 3 weeks, but taste like wet cardboard. But Soviet breeders weren't working for Dole or Del Monte. They were working for survival in Siberia, where growing seasons are measured in weeks, not months. Where, if your crop fails, people go hungry. They were selecting for nutrients, for resilience, for actual food value. They created plants that could live for 50 years and produce nutrient-dense fruit in conditions that would make a California farmer weep. This is the fundamental divide. Capitalism bred fruits to survive capitalism. The Soviets bred fruits to survive Siberia. Emotional renaming of the fruit. The names alone tell you everything. In Japan, the Ainu people called it haskap, from their word meaning something that grows abundantly. They called it the elixir of life. Think about that. Not a snack, not a commodity, an elixir. Something sacred. When it came to Canada, researchers started calling it the fruit of youth because of its vitamin E and antioxidant content. These aren't just marketing names. These are names that carry weight, history, reverence. Compare that to what we call fruits in the West. Red delicious apples that are neither red nor delicious. Honeycrisp, a name invented by focus groups. The honeyberry carries the emotional weight of indigenous wisdom and Soviet survival science. Sensory visual descriptions. Let me describe what you're missing, because you've probably never held one of these in your hand. The honeyberry is elongated, cylindrical, about the length of your thumbnail. Deep, mysterious blue-purple, almost black when fully ripe, with a pale, waxy bloom dusting the surface like frost that never quite melted. The skin is thin, almost delicate. When you bite into it, the flavor hits you in waves. First, there's the brightness, a sweet tart burst that's sharper than a blueberry but rounder than a raspberry. Then, complexity, hints of blackcurrant, shadows of grape, whispers of something you can't quite name. It's what blueberries used to taste like before we bred the flavor out of them. And the juice, deep purple, almost ink-like, stains your fingers the way real fruit should. This is what fruit looks like when it's bred for survival instead of shipping. Antioxidant science. Shock. Now let's talk about what's actually inside this thing, because this is where your understanding of superfoods is about to get demolished. Honeyberries contain cyanidin-3 glucoside, C3G for short, making up 76 to 92% of their total anthocyanin content. This is the compound that gives berries their deep purple color and their most powerful antioxidant effects. Studies show honeyberries can contain up to 186 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams. Oranges have 31. Let that sink in. This frost-tolerant shrub from Siberia has 6 times the vitamin C of the fruit. We built an entire marketing empire around. Total polyphenol content in one Canadian cultivar measured 1,111 milligrams per 100 grams. That exceeds most blueberries and raspberries. One grower claims honeyberries have 3 times the antioxidants, 4 times the anthocyanins, and 5 times the anti-inflammatory capacity of common blueberries. Research has linked these compounds to cardioprotective, anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, anti-cancer, and anti-diabetic effects. This isn't pseudoscience. This is peer-reviewed research. Superfood myth destruction. Here's the part that's going to make the smoothie industrial complex very uncomfortable. You've been sold a lie about superfoods. Acai from the Amazon, shipped thousands of miles, frozen, processed, marked up 3,000%. Goji berries from the Himalayas, dried, preserved, packaged in plastic. Blueberries bred for size and shelf life until they're basically blue sugar bombs. The superfood industry has convinced you that health comes from exotic places, that the good stuff is rare, expensive, and requires a complex supply chain to reach you. Meanwhile, there's a berry that grows in the coldest climates on Earth, requires almost no maintenance, has virtually no pests, and is packed with more antioxidants than almost anything in your grocery store. And you've never heard of it. Why? Because it doesn't fit the model. It's too easy to grow, too hardy, too self-sufficient. You can't build a billion-dollar supply chain around a plant that thrives in your backyard and lives for 50 years. The honeyberry destroys the superfood myth by proving that the most nutritious fruits aren't exotic. They're just unprofitable to industry. Ancient indigenous validation. This isn't some new discovery. The Ainu people of Hokkaido have been harvesting haskap for centuries. They didn't need clinical trials to know it worked. They called it an elixir of life and used its juice as a remedy for youth and longevity. Tribes in Siberia did the same. They survived brutal winters on these berries, fresh, preserved, fermented. This wasn't folk medicine based on superstition. This was accumulated wisdom from people who lived or died based on what the land provided. When Soviet scientists started breeding honeyberries in the 1950s, they weren't inventing something new. They were validating what indigenous peoples already knew. Modern science just confirmed the molecular basis for what the Ainu called magic. The honeyberry is living proof that ancient wisdom and modern science point to the same truth. Secret scientific breeding. Let me tell you about Dr. Bob Boers, a Canadian geneticist at the University of Saskatchewan. Dr. Boers spent decades studying those Soviet cultivars that made their way to North America after the Iron Curtain fell. He organized cross-pollination trials. He created compatibility charts showing which varieties would pollinate each other. He released cultivars like Honeybee and the Boreal series. This is breeding done right. Not for Monsanto, not for Big Ag, for northern farmers, for home gardeners, for anyone trying to grow real food in places the industry has written off. Dr. Boers' work represents a different approach to agriculture, one focused on resilience, nutrition, and accessibility rather than intellectual property and market domination. Supply chain failure, villain. So why can't you buy honeyberries at Walmart? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Fresh honeyberries have a shelf life of about 7 to 10 days, even under refrigeration. They bruise easily. They lose moisture quickly. They can't survive the industrial food system's demands. The industry sees this as a bug. I see it as a feature. This is what real fruit looks like. Delicate, perishable, alive. The fact that it can't sit in a warehouse for 3 weeks isn't a flaw in the berry. It's a flaw in the system. The food industry has built an empire on fruits that can survive abuse. Tomatoes picked green and gassed with ethylene. Apples stored for months in controlled atmospheres. Strawberries bred to have the structural integrity of foam rubber. Honeyberries refuse to play that game. They demand to be eaten fresh, frozen immediately, or processed locally. They demand a short supply chain, and the industry hates that. Because a short supply chain means less profit extraction. less markup, less control. Anti-industry/rebellion frame. This is where it becomes a rebellion. Every honeyberry bush you plant is an act of defiance against an industry that wants you dependent on their supply chains. Every berry you harvest is food they can't control, can't tax, can't mark up by 400%. The industrial food system wants you to believe that good food is complicated, that it requires massive infrastructure, global logistics, and corporate expertise. They want you helpless. The honeyberry says otherwise. It says that the most nutrient-dense fruit on the planet can grow in your backyard, in the worst soil, in the coldest climate, with almost no inputs. It says that real food doesn't need corporations. Rare because unprofitable angle. Let's be crystal clear about why this fruit is rare. It's not because it's hard to grow. It's not because it tastes bad. It's rare because it's unprofitable to the people who control food distribution. Honeyberries require minimal inputs. No pesticides, few diseases, no irrigation in normal climates. They live for 50 years. They produce every year. They're perennial, so you plant them once and harvest for decades. Compare that to the industrial model, annual crops that require yearly replanting, heavy fertilizer, pesticides, and constant labor. Crops that create dependency. Crops that generate recurring revenue. The honeyberry is a one-time purchase that keeps giving. That's a terrible business model if you're trying to maximize profit extraction. Grow it yourself empowerment. Here's what they don't want you to know. You can grow this, right now, wherever you are, as long as you're in USDA zones 1 through 7. 2 bushes, different varieties for cross-pollination. Plant them 3 to 5 feet apart in decent soil. Water them while they establish. By year 3 or 4, you're harvesting. By year 5 to 7, you're getting 3 to 8 pounds per bush, for 50 years. No special equipment, no greenhouse, no expertise beyond basic gardening. Just 2 shrubs and patience. This is food security that doesn't require a subscription. Nutrition that doesn't require Amazon. Health that doesn't require a supplement industry. This is about more than fruit. This is about what freedom actually looks like in a food system designed to keep you dependent. The honeyberry represents an alternative model, indigenous wisdom preserved, Soviet science liberated, public sector breeding distributed freely, a plant that refuses to be commodified, that thrives in places the industry has abandoned. Every garden with honeyberries is a small declaration of independence. Every harvest is proof that the most powerful nutrition doesn't come from corporate supply chains. It comes from the ground, from resilience, from plants bred for life instead of profit. The industry wants you to believe that superfoods are exotic, expensive, and require their infrastructure. The honeyberry proves otherwise. It proves that the most potent nutrition grows where nothing else can, survives what nothing else will, and asks for almost nothing in return. This is the fruit they don't want you to have. Not because it's forbidden by law, but because it's forbidden by economics. Because it makes you free. So plant it, grow it, harvest it. And every time you taste that deep purple burst of flavor, remember, this is what real food tastes like. This is what freedom tastes like. This is the honeyberry. And it's been waiting for you.